Okay, now that we have rigged our character, we want to test out to see whether it can be animated. So right now, if I select the main controller, I should be able to move the whole rig around. Okay, so let's do some simple animation. Okay, so in order to do animation, you must first understand some of the tools in Maya, especially over here, right at the bottom here. This is called the timeline. Okay, by default, you only see about 24 frames listed in this timeline. You can left mouse click and drag left and right to go to any specific portion of the timeline. So as you drag, you can see the frame is also being highlighted here. You can highlight this one and then press 1, and then you can change the navigation of the frame. Okay, and then you can see a bunch of playback buttons here. If you click on the play button, okay, you can see that the timeline, the number of frames, right, will just go forward, and you can even play backwards. Okay, so over here, this is like a magnifying tool. All right, this scroll bar, you can click in the middle and you can scroll forward and you can scroll backwards. Right now, the range of the timeline is set at number 48. Okay, and the focus range is 1 to 24 according to this bar. Now, you notice that this bar, if you click on the middle, you can see the first frame changes to 5 and then to 28. You can actually click on the buttons here by extending or reducing the frame of focus. Right now, you can see I click on the ends, I can extend to the full 48 frames. And now this tool will specify the start time, and then this one specify the playback of every frame. Okay, so the range is 1, and then the end range is 48. So you can, if you don't like, if you need more frames, you can highlight 48, you can change it to 100. So right now we have 100 frames available here. Okay, so to do a quick animation, okay, we just grab this entire rig, right? And then I'm going to push it back until it reaches the end of the grid here. Okay, and to do a simple animation, okay, you can just press S, okay, the S key. Now when you press S key, it actually applies a keyframe, and if you look carefully on the timeline, there's a red line appearing there. So that is a keyframe that's being applied. Okay, so when you press S, the thing about pressing S is that it applies keyframes to all the values here. That's why all these things turn red. Whenever you see red color on your channel and parameters here, that means that a keyframe has been set. Okay, so I'm going to drag this timeline to frame 50, and then I'm going to grab the move, okay, of the main controller, and then I'm going to leave it here. Okay, and then I'm going to press S again. Now notice now there's a brand new keyframe that's being set, and if I were to drag the timeline, okay, you can see a simple animation that is happening. Okay, from frame 1 to frame 50, okay, you can see the character moving from left to right. Okay, so that is the basics of setting keyframes. Okay, but to set keyframes right like that is very inefficient because you are setting redundant keyframe. You are setting uh, extra keyframes which is going to remain the same from frame 1 all the way to frame 50. So let me just undo the setting of the keyframes, okay, until I reach back to 0. Okay, right now there are no keyframes. Okay, so the more efficient way to set a keyframe will be to highlight the channel. That means in this case I know that my character has moved 12 units in the z-axis. So if I want to set a keyframe here, you just highlight it, right mouse click, and then say key selected. So only this keyframe is now selected. Okay, and also another quick way to automate setting of keyframes is to take a note here. There is this thing called auto keyframe. Now when you click on it, it changes red. So if I drag to 50, and then whatever parameter that you have changed, all right, it will automatically detect and you'll add a keyframe for you. Okay, but for the auto keyframe to work, you need to also set keyframes at the beginning. Okay, so let's say I go back to frame 1, and then I'm going to set a keyframe here, key selected here, and then I'm going to come to frame, let's say 25 now, and then I'm going to grab the character and bring it up, and then I'm going to come back to here again, and then I'm going to push the character back down. So as I drag the keyframe, notice now, okay, the auto keyframe has automatically generated the keyframe for me. Okay, so there's pros and cons in using auto keyframe. It actually automatically adds the keyframe for you, but sometimes if you accidentally move too many objects, okay, you will also add all those things, all those extra keyframes for you. Okay, so make sure you remember to turn it off when you don't need it. Okay, so let me just turn that off now. Okay, so this is one quick example of setting keyframes. So go and play with this first. So during the class lessons, we'll be showing you more features. Right now, I just want you guys to just play with the timeline and setting some basic keyframes. Now, if you want to delete a keyframe, okay, there are many ways to do that. Okay, you can actually go to the timeline, okay, holding down to shift and middle mouse click and drag, you can highlight the keyframes that you want to delete. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more time. Holding down the shift, middle mouse click and drag over the keyframe that you want to delete or manipulate. Notice that as I hold down to shift and middle mouse click and drag, okay, you can select bunch of keyframes, okay, the whole entire range of keyframes. You can select individual keyframe. You can actually move them around, okay, by grabbing the center and moving it around. Or when it is highlighted like this, you can also delete them. Okay, so actually you should not press delete, because what I did just now was I accidentally deleted away all my controllers. So the correct way to delete would be, okay, shift middle mouse click and drag, highlighted over the keys, and then you right mouse click and then click on the delete, and then now that keyframe is gone. So right now I only have a keyframe from 1 to 25. Okay, so that is one way of deleting keyframes. Okay, so another way would be to open up a window called a animation editor, and there's this thing called dope sheet. Okay, a dope sheet will show you the keys inside the entire scene. So in this case, you can see these two dark spots here. So these are the keyframes. I can actually select the keyframe, and if you want to see which keyframe belongs to which parameter, you can open up this menu, and it can show you exactly okay, so this is the main controller, and then it is under the translate, and it is and you can see here XYZ in frame 1 has a key, and then only XYZ has one frame in frame 1, but in frame 24 only the y-axis has another frame. So let's say if I do not want the keyframes, I can click on it and then just press delete, okay, to clear away the keyframe. So that's one way of editing the keyframes as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to create another bunch of keyframes. Maybe I just pull this here. Oh, let me just undo that. Turn on my auto key. Come to frame 50, pulling it here. Okay, so far I've showed you the dope sheet. Okay, and you can see as I zoom out, you can see that there's a change as I use the auto key on. You can see that as I moved, right, it generated another keyframe here. So I'm going to minimize this dope sheet. I'm going to show you another window under the animation editors. There's a very powerful editor called a graph editor. It actually shows you, okay, the animation of the character in the form of a curve. Okay, so let me just isolate the Z, because you can see this curve is only in blue color, which is the Z-axis. All right, so you can see very clearly. Okay, let me just focus the attention on frame 1 to frame 50. Okay, so as I play back, you can see this is the timeline that the animation is playing back. Okay, the curve editor actually shows the acceleration and deceleration of the character. So you can see very clearly, as the animation starts from the beginning, the speed is gradually picking up. So it is depicted by this curve. So it's a bit flat at first, and then it's gradually picking up. And then from about frame 14 all the way to frame 36, okay, around this point you can see a relatively straight line. So this means that the object is traveling in a constant speed. But as it starts to reach its destination, what happens? It starts to taper out and it starts to flatten. So if this line is completely flat, that means that there is no movement. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the acceleration and deceleration of the animation. So if I play back the animation again, okay, you can see that the character is gradually picking up speed, constant speed, and slowing down. Okay, so you can actually grab the keys by just highlighting it, and you can middle mouse click and you can actually move the keyframes. Okay, and moving it up and down, you can change how far the character is moving. Let's say I want to slow this animation down, I can increase the animation to over 100 frames, so that when I play back, okay, the speed of the animation, okay, actually changes because I'm actually increasing uh, the acceleration of the character over the 50 frames. Okay, let me just increase this to 100, and also the distance this character is now traveling. Okay, just by manipulating the keys in the timeline and in the graph editor. Okay, so you want to view everything, you just press F and then it will zoom to fit. So this graph editor, okay, as you guys will be playing with later, is a very powerful tool to adjust your animation. Okay, so take some time and explore it and play with the tools. And we will show you some simple exercises to help you understand these tools a little bit more.